Is science-based lifting really a big scam? Maybe, maybe not. This is the question that most people in the fitness industry have been trying to ask for a very long time now. So I'll try to put forth as many points as possible to help bridge the gap between bro lifting and science-based lifting. Fitness and overall lifting has two broad main spectrums. Number one is the bro lifters, people who like to go to the gym every single day, lift as hard as possible, shred and tear their muscles until they start feeling sore and completely beat themselves up to get the stimulus. On the other hand, we've got the science guy, people who supposedly overcomplicate lifting. These guys like to interpret research, try to follow workouts that are optimal as much as possible, and try to add a lot of stability, stick to machines, and avoid the hard, heavy barbell stuff. These guys also sometimes tend to get a bit too theoretical. And gym bros, gym guys absolutely hate science-based lifters. But in this video, we'll talk about the best to the worst about science-based lifting, how you can incorporate science into your lifting routines and actually get benefit without feeling too confused or thinking that it's too complicated. Now, most top-tier bodybuilders are in between. They neither are completely science-based nor are they completely bro-schooled. These guys are people who like the old-school hustle culture, and they also respect that science can make things better for them. They don't lean towards either side, and they end up getting the best bodybuilders because they're open to feedback and open to learning more. The prime example of this is Sebum. He's someone who's been respecting old school bodybuilders and following the intensity that they offer. And at the same time, he's also someone who's explored exercises, different machines that tend to be better biomechanically, and tries to get as better stimulus as possible. In fact, he's also tried a lot of science-based lifting techniques, and at times where he's got injured and he's suffered with shoulder problems. But keeping all of that aside, let's first define what science-based lifting actually is. Now, science-based lifting doesn't mean using resistance bands everywhere or using cuffs or Bluetooth handles or using a skeleton to demonstrate exercise. Science-based lifting simply means understanding and applying physics to make your exercises biomechanically and your stimulus hypertrophically better. This helps you maximize hypertrophy and also reduces the risk of your joint injuries or minimizes fatigue as much as possible. Now, it's not anecdotal evidence or based on someone's opinion. This is most likely proven by research or physical calculations. These science-based lifters are also stereotyped as someone who don't train hard and they're generally skinny. But that's again not true. Science-based lifting does not mean that you reduce effort. It simply means putting the same hard work, putting the same effort, focus, concentration into things that you're already doing and trying to make it a little bit better. It doesn't mean you quit putting effort. It simply means that you channel your effort a little bit better. A simple example of this is an exercise like the barbell row. It's one of the most liked exercise at the gym. Every gym bro has that peak imagination of getting to the gym, doing some heavy barbell rows to build a good thick back. But the barbell row is not biomechanically one of the best exercises. Number one is poor resistance profile. There is less resistance at the bottom and more resistance at the top of the exercise. Number two is unnecessary fatigue. Your hamstrings, your lower back, they get unnecessary fatigued and can compromise you reaching to complete failure. Science understood this. Biomechanics tried to make it better, and it came up with the T-bar row, which is a much better alternative. It is way more stable and offers much better stimulus for your back muscles. There's no reason to hate doing a T-bar row instead of the barbell row, but sometimes people get offended. Now, I'm not going to make this video a science versus an old school debate. We'll cover the basics of science-based liftings and things that you can start immediately applying to your fitness journey. The number one science-based fact that we'll cover. First, we start about talking on how muscles actually grow. Now, muscles don't grow by the pump you get at the gym. It doesn't grow with the soreness you get from your exercise. It doesn't grow from micro tears. People assume that when you go to the gym, you break your muscles, and then after you're done with the workout, the muscles start growing because of repair. That's not the most accurate. Your muscles don't grow after a while or after the workout. They start growing the second you start giving them mechanical tension. This process is called as mechanotransduction. This is the exact process by which mechanical tension that you give to the muscle by adding resistance with the help of dumbbells or machines or whatever resistance you're giving to the muscle. When you give your muscle this resistance, it automatically converts into a chemical signal inside of the muscle that forces it to grow. This process is again called mechanotransduction, and mechanical tension is the number one driver of muscle growth. There is no other factor, not fatigue, not soreness, not micro tears that causes muscle growth. Number two that we want to talk about is training frequency, muscle protein synthesis, and recovery. Now, how often should you be training? You should be training as often as possible. Your muscle protein synthesis is nothing but the protein that you consume from food. It forms an amino acid pool inside of your body. When you stimulate your muscles by adding resistance or giving it mechanical tension, the amino acids combine and form muscle protein. This whole process is called nothing but muscle protein synthesis, and it is also part of mechanotransduction. Now, muscle protein synthesis is what keeps the muscle growing. Inside of the muscles, there are two processes: muscle protein synthesis and muscle protein breakdown. When muscle protein synthesis is higher than muscle protein breakdown, that's when your muscle starts growing. Now, MPS peaks at 24 hours after lifting, and it is also triggered by having a better protein intake, having the right diet, lifting well, etc. etc. But strictly from an exercise point of view, your MPS peaks for 24 hours. After that, it slowly starts going down. So naturally, you would want to keep it high as often as possible. And for that, you should be training your muscle every single day. And that is why a full body split is something that I recommend. Now, this does not mean that doing a push-pull leg split or even a single muscle group split is not going to help you build muscle. This is just a little bit more optimal than doing a push-pull leg split. Even if you're someone who's following a push-pull leg split, that is completely fine. You still have MPS going on inside of your muscles and you're still going to grow muscles. But if you can switch to a full body routine, that would be super beneficial for you. Now, the number one question that people have when they do a full body split is, how will my muscles really recover? Recovery is subjective. It depends on how often you expose yourself to the same stimulus. If you don't expose yourself to the stimulus as often as maybe a bodybuilder or maybe as an athlete, then you will definitely take longer time to recover from it. For example, the first time you stepped at the gym, you were sore just by doing 2 sets of an exercise for about 3-4 days. That's because you've never exposed yourself to that amount of stimulus or that kind of stimulus, and that is why you need time for recovery. So similarly, once you start doing a full body split every single day, you will start noticing that your recovery starts getting better. And people also talk about intra-workout fatigue, which I think is a little bit overrated, because I understand why intra-workout fatigue can be useful if managed appropriately, but compromising on stimulus just to potentially prevent some fatigue doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, again, fatigue is subjective. Your cardiovascular fatigue, your mental fatigue, these are things that you build along the way. Eventually, once you start exposing yourself to the same stimulus every single day, fatigue gets lower, recovery gets faster, and things get easier. So just doing 2 to 3 sets of an exercise and following a full body split, splitting your exercises in different days. For example, doing a chest press on Monday, then doing an incline press on Tuesday, and doing maybe a pec deck fly on Wednesday is a 3-day cycle that you can start repeating if you want to do a full body split. 2 to 4 sets of this, depending upon how well you're trained and how well your technique is in the exercise, is what will give you the best results. Now, how do you really manage soreness? Soreness is a very big pain point. How do you manage soreness? If you're regularly getting sore from your usual workouts, the biggest problem you have is using too much volume in your exercise. Soreness only stems from 2 reasons. Number 1 is doing too much volume, and number 2 is performing a movement or performing an exercise that you have not done before. So doing something new or doing something too much are the only 2 causes of soreness. If you're not doing something new, if the same workout is giving you soreness every single week, then you might want to reduce the volume. An ideal weekly target of 12 to 14 sets per muscle group is what you should be targeting. You can also go higher if your technique isn't the best and you're not feeling the best stimulus, and you can also go lower if you think your intensity is at a very good level. The third topic that we'll cover is exercise selection and biomechanics. Now, biomechanics is one of the most hated concepts, and sometimes people don't follow biomechanics in their exercise and they say that, okay, I haven't followed biomechanics, how am I still gaining muscle? Now, this topic is a bit subjective. Just because you're not following biomechanics does not mean you won't get results. Your muscles still get stimulated, they still get mechanical tension. Can the mechanical tension be better with biomechanics? Definitely. Even a 1% increase in that stimulus just by switching up an exercise or switching up the technique is something that you should be considering. But if you think, okay, I'm coming to the gym, I like this push-pull leg split, I like my barbell skull crushers, I like these exercises which are not biomechanically the best, but I enjoy doing them and I think I can stay consistent doing these exercises, then by all means, doing those exercises will still help you gain muscle. It's not a rigid rule, but at the same time, time. Saying that biomechanics is stupid and it doesn't have any practical application, that is a bad argument. Now, exercise selection or better biomechanical consideration helps in three things. Number one is it gives more stimulus without creating a lot of fatigue on your joint. Number two is that it prevents the risk of injuries and long-term stress on your joints. And number three, obviously, is that it offers maximum hypertrophy. Biomechanics is especially useful for beginners who don't know techniques of any exercise, and it's better that you teach them technique of exercises that are biomechanically better instead of having to rely on them again in the future. Now, the fourth point we'll talk about is programming. How many reps should you do? How many sets should you do? Ideally, like I said, 12 to 14 weekly sets is perfect for any muscle group. You can take this higher if your technique and intensity aren't the best. You can take it lower if you think your technique is to the point. If you're a beginner, you can even do 4 to 5 sets, even in a full body split every single day, till you actually learn to perform the exercise. And what rep range should you train in? The 8 to 12 rep range is ideally the sweet spot. You can sometimes go down to 6 if your technique is right again, and you can go up to 15 if you think you need a better stimulus. And in muscle groups like traps and calves, you can go up to even 15 reps to get better stimulus. The 6 to 15 rep range is a good rep range, with emphasis being towards 8 to 12 rep range. Number 5 is talking about overall exercise selection and how intensity is what actually matters. There's no fixed way to define intensity in an exercise, but what I'm trying to explain here is people fall in love with performing a certain variation of the exercise, or they fall in love with a routine or a certain movement, and that is not the best decision that you can make. More than the variation you're performing, it's intensity of the exercise that matters more. Things like using D handles or trying to stabilize yourself with bands or supports or pads. This helps you increase intensity in an exercise. You need to understand the exact function of the muscle that you have, adding stability, understanding function of your muscles, and exploring ranges of motion that your joints are comfortable working in. This helps you increase your intensity. Intensity means nothing but having enough focus to get the best stimulus from every exercise, every set, every rep that you get. Rather than falling in love with what exercise you're performing or what routine you're following, you should start enjoying how intense you go in your routine. You should be able to enjoy how much you're pushing in a particular exercise. You should be able to enjoy how much focus you're putting in an exercise to get the desired stimulus. And that is why the biggest bodybuilders who get intensity and technique right get the best results. Now, these were 5 detailed things about science-based lifting. But if you're someone who's also confused about nutrition, yes. Now, these were 5 very important topics that we had to consider about exercise science. But talking about nutrition, now nutrition and supplementation is also super important for science-based lifting and getting the best results. So in the next video, we're going to talk about supplements, probably a tier list or a discussion about the best to worst supplements. So stay tuned. And if you want to learn more about science-backed nutrition, then you can consider joining Science of Food, which is my personal nutrition course, part of Conquer, which is a larger course that I also have to offer. The links of both of these are down below. And for more such science-based videos, feel free to subscribe.